And today I will be showing you how to use Serum, which is a digital synthesizer, to explain some Fourier concepts of sound. And this is for my physics project proposal 1. So the goal of this project is to demonstrate the concepts of Fourier synthesis and decomposition, as well as transients, and I will do so by using music production software that closely resembles what Terry has shown in class. One of the main concepts I will go over is that we have learned that all sounds have unique Fourier recipes, meaning that even the most complex tones can be broken down into simple sine wave frequencies, which are going to be harmonic multiples of the fundamental, and those frequencies individual amplitude components. Each one of these recipes of a complex waveform is unique to its own sound, and that's just mathematically a fact. Getting into the proof of that is a little out of the scope of this. So first I'll be introducing some of the metering tools that we'll be using, and these are really similar to what Terry has shown in class. So the first one is called the EQ, or equalizer, and this is basically doing Fourier decomposition on our sounds. So it's taking in some sound. For example, I have a piano synth here loaded up, little keyboard. Let's play a C. So it's taking that C audio and decomposing it into its frequency spectrum. You can see a lot of nice high overtones as we would expect with a piano. And that is something you can compare to. Let's pull up. This is what Serum is, by the way, which we'll be using for the most of this video. Right now I have it set to a simple sine wave right here. So if I were to pull up a spectrum analyzer, not sure that is the right word for a second, we'll see that for a sine wave versus a piano, it's just going to be a simple one peak, one little pure tone. One cool thing I found that's kind of related to recent content in the class is that we can create two voicings within our sine wave and slightly detune them. Yeah, and you hear that's beats because the bandwidth of these two slightly different sine waves are overlapping. But that's just a fun side note. Another thing we could analyze is if I turn the sine wave off and there's a feature called noise, and that just is literally basically white noise, and you can see that there's no really specific fundamentals or anything. It's kind of random, and it's like a drum in that way, or the attack of almost any instrument for a brief second, you could say. But here we can, pitch the sound, but we can't tune it as you could in normal instrument because there's no specific frequencies to really go after. Cool little thing related to the EQ for your decomposer, you might say, frequency analyzer, a lot of names for these things, is, Terry talked about in class that we have things called frequency responses, which is basically a frequency transform, which is basically like purposely modifying the amplitudes of specific regions, and that's exactly what an equalizer has the capability to do. So I can emulate like a old 40s microphone or something, which might have not been able to pick up lower frequencies, by simply just cutting those out or transforming those with this. Think of this red as a function to specifically say cut out the ones in the red, the frequencies in the red. So I play an original audio. This is testing audio for my physics project, and I'm just going to keep saying things, and I'll probably be showing you how the frequencies are being cut in certain areas, and yeah. So you could see as I brought these in over time, it sounded a lot more retro and stuff, and that's because those old mics had that response that is missing all of the lows and some of the highs. So the tool we have for going from the frequency spectrum to the waveform, the synthesization, is called ozone, which we have here. And again, I'm playing a simple sine note out of my Serum synthesizer. By the way, I'm playing a really low note because this time interval for this tool, ozone, is quicker, because usually for music you're not plain notes like say this low that are visually sine waves, because it's just the time scale's different. Usually you'll have like right, so it just seems like basically a block. But if you're playing a really low note, you can see that there's the waveform. Um, so obviously this is a basic sine wave, and then starting to build a Fourier recipe. If I were just to add another tone on top of this, let's see. So there's one tone. If I were to add a G, look, it's a new waveform. Another higher tone, more and more. It's just changing more and more, right? Um, so yeah, so ozone is basically the synthesizer, the Fourier synthesizer that creates your waveform, and the EQ is our tool that's going to be the decomposer, the Fourier decomposer that breaks it down into its frequency spectrum. And the first instrument I wanted to start off with was a trumpet. So basically, the idea here is we are going to take just a simple sine wave and digitally turn it into a trumpet like sound. There's some reasons why we will never be able to actually get it 100% precise, but we'll get into those later. But we're going to give it our best shot. So to start off, we have to know about the timbre. And so the timbre can be thought of as like the defining tone of any instrument. It depends on factors in real life instruments. It depends on factors like shape, length, material, amongst other things. But I'm going to show how with digital synthesizers like Serum here, we can emulate these real life instruments timbres, and we're going to do it by just starting out with a basic sine wave. So you can kind of think of me as like the chef creating the Fourier recipe for a trumpet. Um, so yeah, we're going to be modifying the sine wave with a couple of the different features here. And I'll be talking about how those relate to the goal and achieving the timbre of a trumpet in real life and how it corresponds to why trumpets sound the way they do. And so I pulled up our frequency analyzer and Serum. I'm going to start with the sine wave. So just a basic single tone going on right now. But we know that trumpets have a lot more bright timbre to them, a lot more higher content. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add this preset waveform, which is basically just a formula for a whole bunch of sine waves. But this formula gives us a very bright timbre because it adds a lot of higher sine wave frequencies. Um, and then next, what we're going to do is we're going to give a little bit of detune to this trumpet, just to kind of give it some realistic kind of inaccuracies, I guess you could say, inharmonic accuracies. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Some of these small details are not necessarily important. They're just achieving very small goals of getting a more gritty sound that we want from a trumpet. Add another waveform just to get even more harmonics in that brand because we know that brass and trumpets have a lot of harmonics. So now you can see how this is going to start sounding like a trumpet the more and more we do. So now we're going to go into developing the transients of the trumpet, and basically that is controlling the timbre at different points in time. Because you have to remember that there is different timbres for the attack part, the decay part, and the sustain part of a sound or an instrument. And here's where we'll get into it, but you can't exactly replicate an instrument's attack because during an attack there are inharmonic frequencies present, and you can't exactly calculate or emulate them because something to do with there's like infinitely many basically. Um, so we're gonna do this transient shaping by using what's called the envelope, and you can think of this as a time graph. So right, so 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. Basically, what this is doing is it's a shape for what we want our amplitudes and our frequencies to be at a certain time. So if I put the attack way back, basically it's going to start off with more lows and swoop into those highs once it reaches this peak here. Right? That's because this is controlling this over here. Sorry if this is a little complicated, but this square over here with this shape is controlling how much this meter moves. This meter is displayed on this graph, and you can see, I'll do it dramatically, that it's starting off with a cut on these higher frequencies and letting up on that as time goes on, based on this shape. And so we also here have, so this is the attack up to this white point basically. I'm going to put that around there for now. And then we also have the decay, which is basically the time spent from here to here at this amplitude. Right? So you can see. Expand that. And then sustain is how high we want the amplitude to stay at. And then release is just kind of how long it takes till it fully dies. So short release, long release. And then, so yeah, the main concept I think you should be taken away from this is that of this being, you know, controlling of the timbre over different periods of time, from each 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, broken down to milliseconds. It's controlling the frequencies that are present, right? So usually for a trumpet, we're actually going to start off with, you know, if it's a rapid attack, there's going to be more high overtones present at first. So if we want a quick, loud, super brassy trumpet, if we want just a more mellow trumpet, maybe we'll let the highs come in a little bit slower. And then right as the highs come in all the way, you'll see that it's also the highs for instruments. This is different for drums, but for instruments, you'll see the highs are also the ones that are going to fade first. So right, it goes up and down. Right? So we're basically now pretty successfully shaping transients of a trumpet as they might sound in real life. But yeah, so basically now we have our finished trumpet. I would say it's pretty good. You know, obviously you can probably tell that it's synthesized, but the overall tone can be pretty closely related to that of a real trumpet. And I'll actually let's actually compare. So here's our trumpet, and then let's pull up a real trumpet's frequency spectrum. How do I situate these? All right. You can tell it's pretty similar. A lot of lower fundamental standing out sine wave frequencies here, and then a lot of collision and overtones in the uppers that is a little more gradually shaped. And I should note that this is at the sustain that we're looking at this, because you can see, remember as we just changed, the frequencies are changing with time, but we're looking at the sustain held out note, and it's pretty similar. So I'd say we did a pretty decent job.